Thank you for tuning in to Beyond Evidence. We also want to thank Tom Sheldon with Northeast Georgia Business Radio. So today we're going to talk about the GBI. GBI stands for Georgia Bureau of Investigations. And the name of this episode is GBI Undercover. First, I want to introduce Linda Blechinger. She is our #1 PI, new private investigator with Martinelli Investigations. And before we go into the case, we're going to set a foundation of workman's comp and insurance, because that's what we're going to be dealing with. And Linda, you have a lot of experience with workman's comp and insurance. Do you want to tell us about it?
Sure. Thank you. Being mayor for 17 years in the city of Auburn and also serving as president over the Georgia Municipal Association meant that I dealt with all of the other cities in the state of Georgia. I also sat on the insurance boards for all of those cities that participated.
I bet that was fun.
It's very interesting. We stayed busy all year long. But what that did was really gave insight into what it is that cities deal with. And one of the areas that they deal with that have to do with insurance is workman's compensation. Now, of course, we all know that when somebody's really seriously injured or has a real injury, nobody has a problem paying for that. I mean, if you have a broken bone, you have a broken bone.
Don't have a leg?
Yeah. There are some really serious accidents that happen. So that's not the issue. But there is this undercurrent that happens, and people that sometimes come and work and know that you have workman's comp see that as an easy way to have a couple of weeks off to a lifetime of not having to work again.
Surgeries.
Yeah. Yeah. What we really, well, it's been going on for a long time, but what I began to see is that cities don't really have a choice, right? Like, so if somebody brings a lawsuit against a city and says, you know, the truck ran over my foot and now I can never do the same job that I did before. And they go, and of course they go to the doctor, and they have a doctor that says that, yep, no, they can't put any pressure on that foot. And the city really has no recourse. You typically settle outside of court, and they get a sizable amount of money depending on what they did, how much they were paid, how much longer they were expected to work, you know, that kind of thing.
Well, obviously, if somebody needs the money and has the, you know, to pay out the money, that's questionable in retrospect of how long too. But it affects not when somebody does workman's comp or they have a claim of workman's comp or disability, it affects everybody.
It affects everybody. So like we said in the beginning of this, if it's a real injury, it is a real injury, and there's not a problem paying that out. I mean, that's why you carry insurance. But there are people that scam the system, and those are the ones that it was so frustrating. You know, because you would know, for instance, there might be an employee that's hired that when they come in, they announce to their department, to their other fellows, hey, as soon as my 3 months are up, my probationary period, you watch and see what I'm going to do. And sure enough, 3 months pass, and suddenly there's a workman's comp claim. So cities typically just let the attorneys handle it. And that's the way it was in Auburn while I was mayor for the 17 years, because, you know, you take the advice of now these aren't typically your city attorneys, they're the insurance attorneys, but regardless, either way. So you take the advice of the attorneys. Well, when I came and started working with you, Robin, and heard about some of the workman's comp cases that y'all went, and we're going to talk about that, and that y'all proved that these people were scammers. They were out there working other jobs or just out there using that limb that they said was not able to be used. That would have been very helpful as a city to say, wow, I could have hired a PI. The PI could have went and surveillanced this person and let us know, is indeed this person really that injured that they can't do anything? Or, as we suspected, because you wouldn't send it out for everybody, obviously, is there a possibility that this is all a scam.
It's
And
beyond the evidence.
yes.
I mean, we look beyond that because we don't know the city worker. We don't have a relationship with any of the situation emotionally, mentally, physically. So it's evidence that otherwise wouldn't have been captured.
Right.
But if they're telling the truth, as long as I went through rehab with my leg and not having it,
Right.
I had PIs following me.
Wow.
Because remember, mine was an injury.
Yeah.
And I can tell you the time, date, and place. Me and Kelly was in a store, and I looked over. I said, "That's a PI," and he knew I knew who he was and what he was doing.
He knew I knew. He knew.
Yeah, but I didn't want to go through trial, so I settled. But I had PIs following me just to make sure. Hey, what is Robin doing? Where is she going?
Yeah.
And my claim was not that I couldn't walk and talk, and I could get around. But
Yeah.
I just
And that's one thing that I love, though, what you just hit on is when we do go out and we do surveillance, it is what it is. The evidence is the evidence. We come back and either the person is being truthful, they're not using that limb, they're not able to use that shoulder or that arm or whatever it is that their injury is, or they are. And there's proof of it.
Right, and it helps the attorneys and it helps the city to understand, should we settle or should we go forward?
Yeah.
But a lot of times they just want to settle because they add up the bill of the attorneys when our bill is smaller.
Yeah.
But it's also criminal too.
Yeah, insurance fraud.
It's
Sure.
insurance fraud. And it's gotten to that point sometimes with some cases because they still want to collect and disability, insurance, workman's comp. There's a lot out there that they want to do.
Right. So whether in the private sector or government sector, it doesn't really matter. It is that there is a resource available that I frankly never thought of. The whole time that I was serving, I never considered hiring a PI. And once we started working together, I was like, wow, there were so many cases, not just from my city, but from all the different cities that I thought, wow, this would have made such a huge difference.
Well, don't underestimate. We can still make a huge difference because
Yeah.
think about it. Once this starts going, and once we meet with the cities and the counties and
Yeah.
the municipalities and the courts, or even companies, other companies that do big lumber jobs, or any type of company,
Right.
take Coca-Cola or Pepsi. Once the world understands that they could be surveillanced, then hopefully it will be cheaper or less costly for insurance and less costly for car insurance. You wouldn't believe the people that do the car
Yeah.
and the truckers and their accidents
Yeah.
and what happens there. And sometimes it's not the trucker's fault or it's not the vehicle's fault. So you've got circumstances where hopefully within 5 to 10 years, if you knew a PI could follow you and you were not that injured, you're not apt to go out and scam an insurance company or scam a company and make their insurance go up.
Yeah, that's right.
So to implement this is like, well, why don't we just hire a PI for every single case to see how injured somebody is? And you can be injured just with your thumb and your shoulder.
Right.
But if you're going to pump gas into an 18-wheeler and you're going to move tires and move things around in the construction yard, that's just a little different. And I do understand that there are different disabilities and different parts of the workman's comp.
Right. Exactly.
Sometimes
Yes.
it's just going to the doctor and fixing something or an operation. I get that. But there are lifers
Right.
that you literally, and quote me if I'm wrong, stay on payroll.
Yeah.
And I don't know what they're doing, but they're on payroll. And you're paying for every operation. You're paying for every doctor's visit. You're paying for every rehab situation. You're doing all of that.
Yeah.
And so that's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money. And like you said before, the insurance pool, it affects the whole pool, right? So
Premiums.
just like the natural disasters that happen. When a natural disaster happens, it raises everybody's premiums, not just that county that got hit. It's everybody's premiums. Or even they will take away coverage for certain things. It really does have a profound effect. But I think just getting the message out there that that there is this resource available and that it really can make a huge difference to your bottom line and also for your employees.
Right. I think even starting small. So like this podcast. Okay. So this podcast, I'm so excited. Lots of people are listening to it and they're calling me and they're like, and I have to apologize. I've had a little setback with, well, all I can say is I've lost 40 pounds, so I'm pretty excited about that. That being said, I had a little setback, but I love the podcast. I love to do this podcast. It is a passion, and anybody that we can bring in, because, people that I hardly even know, they're like, Robin, I listen to your podcast. So I'm so excited about that, and I'm so excited you could come, Linda. But being a new PI, were you kind of shocked of some of the workman's comp cases or some of the stuff that we're working?
Yeah, it was very eye-opening to just really understand that it's almost the things that I've seen are you're collecting workman's comp, the person who's collecting workman's comp, and then they might be out there holding a part-time job.
Or full-time.
Or full-time,
Or jumping on the trampoline.
Yeah.
Or, riding their four-wheeler on their property, which is where we fly the drone, because we've had drone flying. So that'll be another episode. I'd like to go into a case I don't think you're familiar with, but you can tell me everything that you think about it. But it was a lady construction company. She owned the construction company. She was a lady. And it was probably 10 years ago. And she had this guy that worked for her that he would sometimes show up for jobs and sometimes wouldn't. So we waited till he was at a park, and we put a tracker on his van. And it was weird about the van because the tags kept changing on the vehicle, which was, criminal in itself. But it was just really odd. He kept doing that. And he had a large family, and he lived in our favorite county we won't talk about. Anyway, we followed him on the 4th of July. And on the 4th of July at Lake Lanier, he was going to treat the whole family. All these people loaded up in his van. And mind you, he was out on workman's comp, but he was out on total disability. He couldn't move. This is that case that's part of our PowerPoint.
Yeah.
Fairly large man, fairly young, nice guy. And he decides to take his whole entire family, grills and all, hot dogs, drinks, everything, to the lake. And, of course, you can imagine the 4th of July on the lake. And it was just packed. And it was the Gwinnett County end of the state of Georgia, because Lake Lanier that's a whole nother podcast.
Yeah.
Lake Lanier.
Yes, it
anyway,
is.
So he proceeded to go into the water, and we were in the water, and play tug of war in the water with his body.
Yeah.
Okay, so you've got that going on.
I remember seeing those photos.
Yes, so he's going back and forth and back and forth. And then he proceeds to have a baby in one hand and a grill in the other hand.
Yeah.
So he goes down this really big hill, and he brings the food, he brings the waters, he brings everything. He's still got this baby in his hand with this grill. And I'll never forget how heavy the grills were there. And so he proceeds to do this for 2 or 3 hours. And then as they're loading up, he's still grabbing the baby. And we have this all on film. This is just one day. And I'm thinking, okay, well, I think we're done. And she said, no. My client said, no, he has another job, and we don't know what he does. Nobody really knows. It's kind of secret. And I'm like, well, that's pretty easy. We'll just follow him tomorrow and see where he goes and what he's doing. So we're behind him, and he's traveling all the way from North Georgia. He comes all the way down, and he's traveling, and he just decides to get off of 285 near Panthersville Road. And I'm like, okay, this is weird. Panthersville Road goes to Georgia Bureau of Investigations. So he proceeds to pull into Georgia Bureau of Investigations and start to go work on a building of Georgia Bureau of Investigations. And at this time, we had all his documents. And he was not documented in the state of Georgia. He was not documented. So we couldn't find anything to deal with his documents at all. And he admitted that to her when he started working for her. And that was one of the reasons why I think she let him go, because he would never produce his documents to be legal in the state of Georgia. So he decides to go in this area and do a construction building. So I'm like, okay, he's really not supposed to do that. He doesn't have an ID. He doesn't have credentials, and he's not even supposed to be driving the van. And that was probably why he was swapping out the tags. So I go into the GBI. This is when you could go into the GBI, and I asked to speak to a supervisor. And the supervisor's like, well, Robin, I don't know if we really care about this or not. And I'm like, you don't care that first of all, he's on workman's comp. Okay, so he's collecting these very large checks, an insurance check, and now he's working for a government building in charge of a government site, and you don't even know who he is. Well, I don't think we just really care. And I said, well, I think you're going to have to need to care. And he's like, why? I says, because I'm going to dial 911 and do a police report. That's one. And number two, Tony, right down the street from Channel 2, is going to come do a story. So Tony couldn't believe it. He was Tony from Channel 2. He just couldn't believe it. So he literally came down the street and did the exact same thing I did with the supervisor. And to this day, now, I think I am the reason why you literally have to have a face recognition and a thumbprint to get into the GBI, because they changed all of their security, how to get into the GBI.
Well, thanks, Robin.
I have to dial 911 at the GBI. So for that alone, that stopped, and it really helped her case. So it just goes to show you that you can film them out doing things, but you can also film them having a job.
Yeah.
And I don't even know if it's a legal job or what happened to him, but I just know that didn't help our resources or help us to be able to understand, okay, do you really exist? Who are you? So I had to show her all the backgrounds and all the aliases that she was listed under. That he was listed under.
Yeah.
And that really helped a lot, which turns me over to another time that I dialed 911 where I had a case with the GBI where my client's sister was missing. She had given her sister a ring, and it was a very nice ring with diamonds. And she had passed away, and the GBI received her body and lost her ring.
Oh, boy.
And it was so devastating, and this was just recently, just in the last couple of years, and it was so devastating to my client that she actually had a picture, because we did an open records request of the ring, and then as she was leaving to be buried, she didn't have the ring. And it just so happened the person I was dealing with at GBI took off for vacation. Young female. I thought that was a hint there, but
yeah.
So it just shows me sometimes that we can go beyond the GBI and beyond evidence, not stepping on their toes or saying the GBI, they cooperated, but obviously the ring was there and now it's gone. And that we can help in other investigations like that. But some of the stuff that we film with workman's comp and insurance, how much money do you think that would save a city if you literally sat down and caught some of those people? Are we talking, in your opinion, thousands or?
I think at the least hundreds of thousands, and at the most, cumulatively, millions. And I mean, depending on the size of the city, right? I mean, Auburn's a pretty small city still with about a population of about 15,000, considered a medium-sized city, but comparatively speaking. And then you look at Columbus, look at Valdosta, cities that have a very large workforce. The numbers just go up exponentially. And then you don't only have the employees that are suing, you have people just sue cities. Counties have an immunity to a certain amount of money that the state does. State has immunity, counties have immunity, cities don't have that. So cities can be sued. Yep. Cities can be sued and can literally be bankrupted.
Have you seen that happen?
Very, very close. There was a city that had a small airport, and there was an accident, and there was at least one death, I think maybe two. The airport was sued, and the city was sued.
That's it for part 1 of GBI Undercover. Please contact us by our website, martinelliinvestigations.com. Martinelli ends in an I. Investigation starts with an I, so that's 2 I's with an S on the end. Our email is MII, and then Georgia spelled out, GeorgiaPI @gmail.com. And please call us anytime at 770-337-3999, 770-337-3999 for a free consultation. Thanks so much and have a great peachy day.